So hopefully I am live on the Coaching Masters. This is very exciting. I look like I'm far too close. I'm going to move it a little bit. Just let me know if you're there. I'm going to wait it's bang on 7 now. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes to see if some people arrive, which would be lovely. Otherwise I was talking to myself for a while, which would be also fun, but never mind. So I'm just going to say hi if you're there, I think is a good thing, because it'd be nice to see that I can see you, although I'm not sure about where to see the comments on here, because I'm usually on my phone and I'm on my PC today. So maybe give me a thumbs up or just let me know that you are there. Just bear with me 1 moment. Honey, just bring me my phone, please. Because I can't see comments or anything on here. Oh, I've got it, it's fine. Right, do apologise for that, folks. I do have my phone right next to me and I've just shouted, this is how good with technology and things. I'm just going to have a look and make sure I can actually see that I have gone live in the group. Oh, here we go. I am there. Oh, there we go. And I can see the comments. I'm going to have my phone there then, because I can only see the comments on my phone. I can't see them on this computer. So, hi everyone. We'll start again. Just rewind and start again. And I'm still smiling, which is good. Thank you for being here. And hello, John. I can see who said hello to me now. That's great. So I've got 4 people watching. And it is 2 minutes past 7. So I'm going to make a start. So if you haven't already gathered, I am Claire Downham, and I'm a lifestyle coach and hypnotherapist. And I help people, I guide actually stressed out professionals on a unique journey to inner peace and innate well-being. And hopefully you're going to get a little bit of a flavour of how I do that today, and also a little bit about my story and how I came to be here right now chatting to you. I'm going to start, first of all, by telling you a little bit about my story, because it's really relevant to the things I'm going to tell you today, because my journey over the last 5 years to find my own personal inner peace is important, I think, in terms of telling this story to you and sharing what I've learned over that time. So I just over 5 years ago, actually, the 31st of March was the 5-year anniversary of what happened to me. So I was a head teacher in a primary school on the edge of Leeds, quite a big primary school with over 400 pupils and a massive nursery as well. So it was a really big primary school. And on the 31st of March 2015, I went into work and I took one look at my computer, and I actually couldn't bend down and switch it on that day. I just couldn't face doing another day of what I was doing. And that day I went to the doctors straight from work, and I was diagnosed with severe depression. In actual fact, as it transpired a short time later with further diagnosis, I actually had adrenal burnout. So I was that stressed out professional. But I think a lot of people say, oh, that's teaching. Teaching is really stressful. But in actual fact, it was my life, which was ridiculously stressful. I did in fact think I was Superwoman, and when I look back at what I was doing in that period of time, it was ridiculous. So I'd had a year, about 18 months of a challenging time. I had started to live life a little bit more crazy than you probably should when you just split from your husband. So I split from my husband, did lots of online dating, did lots of salsa dancing in actual fact, and a little bit too much drinking on a Saturday night in clubs in Leeds. So I'd become this quite wild person, And I was just doing far, far too much on a day-to-day basis. It was so utterly unsustainable the way I was living my life. And in that last few months prior to me walking out of work and never going back, I actually was sleeping between 3 to 5 hours a night, and still getting up and being a head teacher and a single parent and everything else. So my life was just too busy. And I think it's not, my life personally is much calmer now, much more peaceful. But I think actually that life, generally speaking, is far too busy. And I think it's really interesting that when I originally agreed to do this live quite some time ago, life was still quite busy for most people. And actually now we are having to slow down and having to stop, which is producing some challenges for people, I think, in terms of doing that. So I was off work actually for a whole year, during which I did pretty much nothing. I couldn't really do very much. I struggled to get out of bed. I had very little energy. I was physically exhausted most of the time. And I spent a whole year trying to recover from what had happened to me. And in the end, on the 1st of April 2016, almost exactly a year from when I'd walked out of work, I actually resigned. And interestingly, the universe was obviously had my back for that period, because it was just 10 days later when I got an email inviting me to train to be a hypnotherapist. So that's what I did. So I spent the last 3.5 years or so doing that. And then obviously I've trained in coaching with coaching masters, and currently doing the NLP training as well. But none of that journey would have started if I hadn't have burnt out. So I guess the universe all the time will sorting things out for me, and I will be talking a little bit more about that during this training. So during this training, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my journey from that person who was still ill when I resigned from work and trained to be a hypnotherapist. I was still quite ill and still recovering, and how I got from there, from a very stressed person who wasn't relating well to her world, to where I am now, which is a place of generally a very peaceful place with a very peaceful mind, and tell you the steps I went on that journey to get there. And hopefully you'll take some things away from this that will help you too to step onto your own path towards inner peace, because I would say it's probably the best place to be, really. So in the period sort of from when I resigned, really, I wasn't really doing much in terms of trying to help myself get well. I was reading a lot. I wasn't doing an awful lot of stuff prior to resigning. But when I resigned, a big weight was lifted, and I did start to realise that if I didn't do something differently in my life, I was just going to probably repeat that cycle again in some new career and some new part of my life. So I did all those things that probably many of you have done over time. So I have kept a gratitude journal actually for more than 5 years. That was an ongoing process that I was already doing. I'm a regular meditator. In fact, I meditate still on a daily basis. I've done affirmations. I've had counselling. I've obviously had hypnotherapy, lots of that. I've done tapping and exercise regularly, eat a healthy diet. I do all of those things that we kind of talk about in terms of our well-being and staying healthy. So give me a thumbs up if you've tried some things to feel better, and some of those things that I've just mentioned, or maybe tap in the comments the things that you've done to help yourself feel better on your journey that you've been on with your own well-being. So what kind of things have you tried? Are some of those things that are familiar to you in terms of things that you've tried to get well? So I can see John and I can see Rebecca. Thank you for saying hello. So what things have you tried to feel better during your journey? Because we've all been on one, haven't we, at some point, and we've all done some kind of self-improvement and tried things to help ourselves feel better. So what have you tried? So if you do want to write some things in the comments, that'd be great. But I'm sure we've all tried a lot of the things, the journaling and the gratitudes and the meditation, all those things. We've all tried different things. And all those things have helped me in some way, shape, or form. All those things have definitely had value, and have helped me on that journey towards my own sort of inner peace and well-being. Just losing the phone there. So I did all of that, all of those things, and I did feel an awful lot better and found a lot more peace, than I had in the past. But last year I had a number of health challenges, mostly around being a woman of a certain age, and noticed that my mood was very up and down, my motivation was very up and down, and I was doing quite a lot of the time, doing all my coaching masters training, and then moving into the ultimate launch, and then now this year the NLP. But I was struggling with motivation and struggling to keep myself going, and therefore, probably like many of us do when we're not doing what we think we should be doing, I ended up beating myself up a little bit and not feeling so good. And then I went to chat to a gentleman who's a coach, who I've known for quite some time, and he was just saying, come and have a chat to me. So I went for a chat with him, and the main scope of that conversation was me saying, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I've got all these plans and things written down that I think I should be doing. And he was kind of saying, well, what if it's okay that you don't do those things? And I was a bit floored by this, because generally when you go to see a coach, it's about to have somebody kind of pushing you along and helping you to meet your goals and all those kind of things. So, and then we had a conversation, and the conversation was around the fact that the idea that I should be doing those things was just a thought, and that it, as a thought, had no value, no higher value than any other thought. And then as I talked further with this man, he taught me about a really interesting understanding that I kind of had an idea about previously, but the depth at which this understanding went to was much more than previously. So what he said to me was, he spoke to me about thoughts creating feelings, which sounds really simple. What we generally think, right from when we're very, very young, we are brought up to think that our circumstances create our feelings. And of course, we grow to understand that because we're told that by the adults around us. So we're told that, for example, our mum or dad might say to us, I'm absolutely furious and you're making me angry because you've not tidied your bedroom, and things to that effect. We're told that we're responsible for other people's feelings. And obviously one part of that is empathy and understanding and caring about other people. But in actual fact, we are not caused to feel anything by our circumstances. There is something in the middle of that, and that thing is our thinking. So whereas we ordinarily might think, or lots of people do think, circumstances create feelings, and you can see that around you so much at the moment. There's an awful lot of people who believe that they are feeling a particular way because there is a virus in our environment at this moment. And in actual fact, it's their thoughts about that are creating the way they feel. So just give me a thumbs up if that kind of makes sense in any way, shape or form. That idea that you're brought up believing that those circumstances are creating your feelings. So, give me a thumbs up and I can't see them. Okay, so we're brought up with that principle that our circumstances create our feelings and create our reality. But in actual fact, that's not true. It is our thinking about those circumstances that creates our feelings. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a dandelion now to kind of help you to hopefully understand this. A lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is based on analogies and metaphors for this understanding. So we all know what a dandelion is. A dandelion is just a little yellow flower with a green stalk and some leaves that appears all over the place and spreads very, very easily. Those are some facts about dandelions. Those facts and the dandelion itself cannot create any feelings in anyone. However, if you meet with a gardener who absolutely wants his lawn to be totally pristine and flat and green and beautiful, then and you get him on about dandelions, then you will probably experience his feelings quite loudly, possibly, in that he will be angry about the dandelions, he'll think they're annoying, he won't like them, he will do anything in his power to kill them off. He might tell you, having all those dandelions in my lawn, it's making me feel angry and frustrated and irritated or whatever else. But remember, we are still just talking about a tiny flower with a yellow head. However, if you meet with somebody who loves bees and knows that when the first dandelions come up in the spring, they are the most important food for the bees, and you're a bee lover and you also care about the environment and you realise that bees are really, really important for our environment, and the actual fact if bees aren't doing well, we're not doing well, then you will love bees and you'll think bees are wonderful, and you'll want to spend time nurturing the dandelions and enjoying the dandelions and thinking they're wonderful and loving them and feeling great passion towards the dandelions, because the dandelions provide that food for the bees, and you know that bees are really important. So there you can see an example of a thought created reality. That dandelion hasn't changed what it is. A dandelion is always just a dandelion. It never stops to being a dandelion. However, between the gardener and, let's say, the bee lover, you can see a completely different experience of life, a different experience of the dandelion because of how they think about the dandelion. And none of that has anything to do with reality. The reality is the dandelion is still a dandelion. Nothing has changed about the dandelion because of how those two people relate to it. And that analogy about the dandelion, I quite like that one, because I think it's just so simple, but it makes a lot of sense. And you can see that in the world, because you can see it right now in terms of how people are relating to our current circumstance in this country. There are just completely different relationships with it. There are some people who are feeling very positive and making the most of the time at home. There are other people who are obviously very worried about various different aspects of what this is going to bring into their lives and into the life of the country. But that doesn't change the circumstance. The circumstance is what it is. It's those people's thoughts about the circumstance that is changing how they feel about it. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to have a quick look at the comments. Long list of things people have tried in the past. Hi to Anya, that's lovely. So yeah, so does that make sense? Does the dandelion analogy make sense? Can you see how that is thought that's creating that reality? It isn't the actual dandelion, bless it. It's doing no harm, is it? It's just like sitting there growing out of the ground, minding its own business. So hopefully that makes sense. So that sounds really simple. So let's all just realise that our thoughts are creating our reality and crack on with life and everything will be wonderful. But it's not that quite that simple, as I'm sure we all know. So what happens with thinking is that we can often accept, and I think if you've done any work around self-development and you've had coaching or you've done LP, you kind of know that thoughts are creating our reality. That it's how we think about things that's going to make us feel a particular way. And we can kind of do that. And we can do that with the thought of dandelion. We can totally see how that makes sense. However, some thoughts seem a lot realer than others. And I did a little live on my own Facebook profile a few days ago. And it went a little like this. So we all have certain thoughts that we struggle more to accept are not real. Some thoughts to us seem much realer than others. So my comedy example of this is that I have this thing about middle lane hoggers. If there's any watching, I'm really sorry, but can you just explain to me what that's all about? so so I have a thing about middle lane hoggers. So if you're ever in a car with me and there's somebody in the middle lane and there's nothing in the inside lane at all, obviously you can be in the middle lane if you're overtaking, but not otherwise. Anyway, and I can have a proper rant about how unreasonable they are and how ridiculous it is. And my fiance Bruce might be in the car with me, and he'll be agree with me that they're ridiculous. And so we'll get caught up in this concept that the thinking about a middle lane hogger, is absolutely right. It's totally and utterly right. But of course, it is no more true or real than any other thought. And it is that thought, it is not the middle lane hogger that is creating frustration and anger in me. It is 100% my thinking about the middle lane hogger that is creating those feelings in me. Much as I can be literally shouting at the windscreen at the middle lane hogger about it all and getting very frustrated, it isn't in fact that middle lane hogger. It's me that's creating that feeling inside me. And those are the kind of thoughts that can appear really real. Those things that we feel a little bit bother us a bit, or we think somebody's not behaving quite right. And also, I think those things that a lot of other people think. So, for example, the things around what's happening in the world at the moment, there is, there will be a group of people who will think a particular way about it. And they will exacerbate each other's thinking because there's lots of people think it. So if lots of people think it, then it must be right, surely. If lots of people think a certain thing is sad, or a certain thing is unjust, or whatever else, then surely it must be right. We must be right. Our thinking must be right, and we must be right to feel this way because lots of other people are doing it as well. But a massive thinking doesn't mean that thinking is any more real than it is when there's just us thinking it. And plus, most of the time we don't always know what everybody else is thinking anyway. But it's very easy to get caught in a trap where that thinking, the thinking that's reinforced by others, or the thinking that's about something you feel very passionate about, can seem more real than other thinking, even though none of it really is. So just let me know if that is making sense. Because the aim today is, of course, hopefully to make sense and hopefully help some people along the way. So, where does all this thinking come from? Because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I notice when I'm in meditation that my thinking is utterly random. And I think meditation is a great opportunity to notice your thinking. Because for me, the silent meditation, which is what I do most of the time now, is that process of just taking my attention from my thoughts to my breath. And then another thought will pop up, and I might travel a little bit with that thought and then go, back to the breath again. And it's in that quiet time that I notice how random my thoughts are. I'm not choosing what thoughts appear in my head. So why sometimes do we attach such a lot of kudos to those thoughts when they are so random? They just pop into your head, don't they? You can literally be sitting there minding your own business, doing something, or in meditation, or walking along, and some random thought will just pop into your head. But like I've already said, some thoughts seem more important than others. Some thoughts seem like we have to do something about them, or we have to try and control them, or we have to change them. But in actual fact, when you realise that all thoughts are random and all thoughts are made up and just are that random bit of energy coming into your mind, it becomes easier to find peace of mind because you don't have to sort those thoughts. You don't have to work out which ones are right and which ones are wrong. You can just kind of accept that they're all a bit random and none of them are really real. They are just hot air inside our minds. And a little example I use this with a coaching client the other day actually. I said to her, can you think of just think of a pink elephant? And of course, then the pink elephant pops into your head because I put it there. Why is it we give value to any other thought more than we do the thought of a pink elephant? When we think of a pink elephant, we can go, silly, that's just silly, it's not real, it's just a pink elephant. But then when we think about some other things, we can't let go of those thoughts quite so easily. They seem so much more real. And of course they're not. None of them are. So I have a really nice metaphor, analogy, I suppose, to talk about where those thoughts come from. And those thoughts, I think, come from something bigger than us, really. Perhaps you might call it some kind of energy, a universe, a God, whatever you want to call it. So I always think of you and your mind, your sort of innate well-being as a blue sky. And even when it's really, really, really cloudy in the sky, we know, don't we, that we know the blue sky's behind there. We know it's still there. So if you imagine that blue sky is your innate well-being, the pure you, I suppose. And the sun is like that big ball of energy, the universe just shining down on the earth. And the sun evaporates water from the earth and produces clouds. And we don't get to choose which clouds, which are like the thoughts, come across our mind. We don't get to choose what shape they are. We don't get to choose how white or black they are. They just appear. And they just keep appearing. And then there's a breeze that blows those clouds across the sky, like the thoughts blowing across your mind. And they're just all random. And perhaps sometimes we see some shapes in those clouds. Some of them might be wonderful, happy things for us to see, and some of them might be more frightening and things that make us feel fearful. But they all just keep floating across the sky and appearing at random. And if you think of those clouds are like our thoughts, then they are just floating across the sky at random. They're appearing at random. And where the peace is found is when you can just allow those clouds to float in and out of your mind, realizing that you don't have to grab those thought clouds, you don't have to do anything with them, you don't have to affirm them out, you don't have to therapize them out, because none of them are real anyway. Not a single one of them is real anyway. And you can just allow those thoughts to come and to go, and to come and to go. And that's where the inner peace is found. And the shapes of the clouds, some of them we just can allow to float past, blown by the breeze. But some thoughts, some shapes of clouds look more important than others. Or perhaps they look a little frightening and we think we have to do something about them. But no cloud, no thought cloud is any more important than any other. And they can just float in and out of your mind. So I hope that particular analogy makes sense. And I think the key with finding that peace of mind and that innate well-being is that your well-being, your who you really are, and your pureness and your health and all of those things, mentally and physically, are all there all the time. They just get hidden sometimes by a whole lot of thinking. And there's all sorts of thinking that we've talked a little bit already about, thinking that can appear real. And there's all sorts of thinking that can appear real. So this is one that I see on Facebook all the time. What other people are thinking because of their tone of voice or their facial expression, what their intentions are towards you, You can never know. Anything you think about that is just thought like any other thought. And no matter how much the evidence seems stacked in favour of some idea you have about somebody's intentions or thoughts or feelings towards you, it's still all thought. And it's more likely to be a projection of how you're feeling and how you're perceiving the world than it is that other person. It's very easy to get caught up in the way somebody looked or the tone of voice they used, meaning something. But as we all know, as coaches and trainee coach and anybody involved in the self-development world, you can never really know what anybody else is thinking. They've got their own map of the world and that's theirs. It's not yours, and it is different to yours. So another kind of thought that we can get really caught up in is our negative thoughts about the future. And in this understanding that's brought me closer to a deep sense of inner peace, the importance of being only in the moment has become even more prominent. So I've always understood mindfulness and how to help make that more part of my life and how to be in the moment. But I think this understanding has made that even more powerful, in that most of the thoughts that we have that create unpleasant feelings in fact all the thoughts we have that create unpleasant feelings in us are either of the past or the future. And bearing in mind we already know that all thoughts are bunkum anyway, it's easier to find that inner peace when you focus on what's right in front of you right here and right now, and B, realise that all that stuff about the past and the future is just made up. You don't remember the past accurately, and we think the past is having a massive impact on our present, and it doesn't have to. And the future just is unknown. Even the end of this presentation is unknown, even though it's only 28 minutes away, or maybe a bit less. Let's see how it goes. I'm just going by intuition. Let's see what happens. But all the future is just an unknown. And when you step back into the present and you sit in the present, and let go of all this idea about the future and what it should look like, you actually find that just by stepping one foot in front of the other, and doing what's in front of you, you are much more guided by your inner light, your intuition, what's right for you, rather than being shunted along into making decisions based on what the future is going to hold. One way in which people often get very caught up in the future as well is kind of thinking that you're going to know how you are going to behave in the future. So the you that's here right now on Wednesday evening at just after 7:30 is not the same you that will even be in existence in half an hour's time. That's going to be a different person. And what we tend to do is tend to get caught up in the thinking that we know, A, what we will feel like in the future when we hit a certain situation, and B, what we'll think in that situation. And obviously C, we think we know what the situation is going to be like anyway, which of course we don't. So here's a great little idea to help you understand this. So when you go to the kitchen to make a cup of tea, which is just an ordinary everyday kind of task, I'm fairly sure you don't go through all the different scenarios that could happen. So potentially you could spill the tea, you could spill the sugar, you might drop the cup, either empty or full, and then there'll be stuff everywhere. You don't do all of that when you're just going to make a cup of tea. You just naturally go into the kitchen, make a cup of tea, and you know what? If something spilled or broke or something went wrong, you would just clear it up, because that would be the you in the moment responding to what was there in the moment. But what we tend to do instead of that is, when we're looking at bigger things and more future things and our careers and our relationships and our meetings that we have to go to, we tend to do all this working out how we're going to be and how it's going to work out and what will be the next step and how will I behave when this happens. And we get massively caught up in that. It's all just thinking. And none of it's true. but it's so easy to get caught up in it. So that's around what we think we cannot do, what we think we're not going to be able to do in the future. It's very easy to get caught up in that. But just do what's in front of you, because you now can handle anything that is in front of you now. And the you of the future, she or he has got all that nonsense. They'll sort that out when it comes to it. You don't need to worry about that, because future you is going to worry about that when they get there. Or not worry about it, they're just going to do it, whatever it is that's in front of them. So the other kind of thinking, so we talked about a few bits of thinking there that people get caught up in. What other people think, a negative view of the future and the fact that we won't be able to handle that future in some way, shape or form. And the other one is beliefs. So we all have, I've done lots of work on beliefs through hypnotherapy, through coaching, and now looking at them through NLP as well. But one of the things to realise about a belief is just a great big, enormous chunk of thinking that's been around a long time. It has no more value than any other kind of thinking. It's just really embedded because you've thought it a lot and you've thought it for a long time. But belief is just the same as any other thinking. It is just, it's just thinking. It's just the same as any other thinking, but just feels so very real. And beliefs do stop us. They hold us back and they stop us doing the things we want to do. But that's partly because we believe them to be true. And sometimes we believe our beliefs so strongly that we forget that they're really just thinking that's got a little bit out of control and lasted a really, really long time. So stress and anxiety, as I'm hoping you're understanding, and all that stuff that we do to take us away from inner peace, is created by too much thinking. Now, when I went originally to see the gentleman I was talking to at the beginning of the story, I originally went to see him about procrastination, as I said, and about not doing the things I thought I should be doing. And what was happening at that point for me was there was a great big pile. I'm going to shrink down so you can see my great big pile of thinking. There was a great big pile of thinking here. So there's the thought that I've got to have a plan, and then there's a thought that I need to do the plan, and then there's a thought on the thought, on the thought, on the thought, on the thought. And what I had then was this like enormous orchestra of noise in my head of what I should be doing and what's on my list, and feeling rubbish about not doing them and overthinking all of that. And I did have this pile of fuzz around my head, and it was like an orchestra. It was very, very noisy. And the way I've come to understand my innate wisdom is that my innate wisdom is like a flute in the middle of that orchestra. So whenever you're doing all that thinking and your mind isn't peaceful, it's very, very difficult to hear the guidance that comes from that big energy that's bigger than you. So that universal energy, that God, that light, whatever you want to call it. You can't hear that tiny flute in all that orchestra of thinking. And so you tend to end up doing things because you've pushed and shoved yourself to do them, and because they're on a list, and not because you're being guided by what's really right for you. And I think I kind of understood this before because of the way I resigned and got an email 10 days later to train to be a hypnotherapist, and what that's led to in my life in the last 5 years, well, that's 4 years. I kind of always knew there was something sorting things out that's bigger than me. And now I hear it an awful lot more. I think once you find that inner peace, you just hear that gut instinct, that innate wisdom, whatever you want to call it. When there's a lot less thinking, you feel a lot more guided. And what I notice now is that I do a lot more of what's just in front of me and what feels right. And a lot of the things I kind of changed about my business in the last couple of months or so have just felt right, righter than anything had ever felt before, really. Less shoehorned into something, the synchronicities seem to appear much more naturally now than they have done for quite some time. And I can feel like I can hear me, what I really need and what I really want, rather than doing too much thinking and ending up feeling a bit pushed and shoved by what's around me rather than what's inside me. Because all of this I'm talking to you about today is an inside out understanding. It's that understanding that everything comes from the inside. Everything comes from inside of you, and everything that you think's on the outside of you is what you're creating, the reality you're creating through your thinking. And once your mind's quieter, you just create different things, I think. And the great thing about this understanding is that it's just an understanding. There's nothing to do. You don't actually have to change anything about your life. The things that I used to do to help myself feel better, I still do some of them. I still exercise every day because I like it. I still eat well because I like eating well. I still meditate and I still keep a gratitude journal because they're just nice things that I like to. I end the day with gratitude and I start the day with meditation. They're just things I like to do. And I do them because they feel good to me now, rather than doing them because I felt I had to push myself in a particular direction to feel well. And with this understanding, there is no need really to do anything else. You do a lot more being. And so I guess this understanding came at a perfect time, really, for me, and having my staycation, as I call it. I don't like that whole word. In that there's a lot more time to be and just do what's in front of me, and that feels really good. So I'm just going to pick up I've made a few notes here, which I'm going to have a look at and make sure I've covered everything. So some of the things that I think are important right now, which I guess I wasn't going to cover before, but that seems important, is to, as part of this idea of being in the present, knowing that thinking is creating reality, there's a great deal of power in accepting where you are right now. And of course, where we all are right now is where we are. And I think a lot more people have realised how little control we have, because we've had a lot of control taken away from us, of course, at the moment. But you don't really have much control anyway. So accepting that is really empowering. And another thing that comes from a peace of mind is that the uncertainty is the norm. I think as humans, we try to make things certain and we hang on to things with our fingernails, thinking that we can make them always be there, and we can't. And so then we feel upset because they're not certain. And when you accept that that everything is uncertain, that nothing is certain, that brings a great deal of inner peace too. And just another thing that I jotted down, because I typed something up and I jotted a few things down, was around the fact that thoughts will change. So we can think one thing about something one day, and then our mind can be changed and we can think about something else. And that just even more is an example of how transient thought is and how thought isn't really real, because our thoughts about things can change so many times. So I'm going to draw to a close shortly. I would say that inner peace that I think I have so much more of now, and that I help my clients to find, comes from just knowing that your thoughts are creating reality, and knowing that in every single circumstance that never changes. Your thoughts are always creating reality, no matter how real the reality seems, however much it feels like it really is creating a reality. It's just your thoughts. And you don't need to do anything about that, because your thoughts are random and they're going to keep showing up. But what I've noticed is, as I've grown more into this realization, they float across my mind so much faster now. They just kind of float past, and I don't feel the need to believe them. And as a result, the peace of mind is there much, much more. And I think the last thing to say is to remind you that once you have this inner peace, you will be guided by your own innate wisdom. It is always there. And that blue sky that is your innate well-being, it is always there too. It never disappears. It just gets covered up with a whole load of thinking too much of the time. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope that for people who are listening now or in the future, that they do find those understandings a great way to move towards inner peace. If anybody wants to talk to me further about that, that would be great, of course, and I'd be happy to hop on a call with people via Zoom, of course, or telephone. Has anybody got any questions? I'm just going to look at the comments. So there's some nice comments. Nice to see. John said it makes a lot of sense. That's good. And Anya, so true. Everything starts with a thought and ends with one too, I think. Has anybody got any questions? I'm just going to refresh my phone to make sure I've got everything up to date. Because it isn't always doing that. There we go. A nice thank you from John. And I think the last thing to say is to remind you that playing back on myself. Thank you, John. I'm glad you found that helpful. That's really good. Oh, I'll just recommend some reading, actually. That would be a good thing, I think, wouldn't it, for people? And I might drop those in the comments. So I think starting with The Inside Out Revolution by Michael Neill and any other books by Michael Neill of a similar nature. He has been an absolute trooper, actually, and put lots of his resources are now free on his website, which is great. He's offered all sorts of access to his groups to talk with him and all sorts of things. So a lot of that stuff's free or pay as you feel at the moment. So I would say if you want to understand more about this understanding of the inside out nature of life, then The Inside Out Revolution is a great book to start with. There's another couple of authors, Nicola Bird and Claire Diamond, spelled Dimond, rather than with like the precious stone, although she's very precious because the book's lovely. And those are another couple of authors that I've engaged with in understanding this process. But as I say, I'd love to hop on a call with people for an hour to talk through this, because I just love talking about it, and the more I can talk about it, the better I get talking about it. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I'm just going to do one last refresh to make sure that I've caught all the comments, because that's not refreshing as fast as... No, I think that's everything. Oh, thank you so much. Lots of thumbs up and love hearts. That's great. And I'm going to finish off with one of those little hearts. Have a lovely rest of the evening, and thank you so much. Oh, we've got a little comment from Brad. I'm going to read that. Yeah, self-talk is just another thought, isn't it? So I think Brad's mentioned there about directing things, but I think that it's almost like the stuff that's going on in your head is over here, and the understanding that I'm talking about is over here. And what happens is, as you gain, it's really hard to do this because your camera makes everything back to front. As you gain and solidify the understanding of the inside out nature of life over here, all this over here just melts away. And you don't have to do anything, it just disappears. And that is totally my experience, and the experience of the other authors I've just spoken about and how it changed their lives, is that you just look over here and you get more and more understanding of what's here, and then it just disappears. So the self-talk or the negative beliefs spinning around your head and all that stuff, the more you understand the real truth of thoughts creating your reality, doesn't matter what those thoughts are, whether they're beliefs or whether they're self-talk or whatever they are all thoughts. They're all thought generated. And you don't really have to do anything once you understand this understanding. It's a good sentence, isn't it? It all just melts away. And that's why I'd love to talk to lots of people about it. So if you do want to talk to me about it, drop me a message. I'm happy to hop on a cat call for an hour just because I love chatting about it, as you probably gathered, because I've managed to talk for 50 minutes non-stop. That's great. It's just like being a teacher again. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks, guys, and anybody watching on the replay, I'll look forward to reading your comments too. Have a lovely rest of the evening, and enjoy your new normal. Enjoy every moment, because that's all there is. Take care, everyone.